Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the dark screen before him. His gray hair and tired eyes told the story of 50 long years. 50 years of secrets, 50 years of building, 50 years of waiting for this exact moment. "Sir, they're here," Captain Lee said quietly beside him. She was young, barely 30, but her skills had earned her the position as his second-in-command. Her fingers moved across the control panel with practiced ease. Nodded slowly. "How many ships?" 50,000, sir, just as Commander Wu predicted 5 years ago. The Admiral allowed himself a small smile. Wuhan had been right. The intelligence officer had warned them that the Empire would come. He had studied their patterns, their history, their arrogance. Every calculation pointed to this day. Earth had been silent for half a century. No deep space missions. No contact with other alien races. No trade. The borders were closed. To the galaxy, humanity had simply disappeared behind their little blue planet. The Empire ruled 200 worlds. They were powerful, they were proud, and they saw Earth's silence as fear. "They think we're weak," said, reading the same thoughts in her Admiral's expression. "Let them think that," replied, "for a little longer." Far below them, in the underground command center, Dr. Park watched her screens with bright, excited eyes. She was the mind behind everything. The quantum fold construction technology was her gift to humanity. With it, they could build ships faster than anyone thought possible. "All systems are green," she reported into her headset. "We can activate the fleet at your command, Admiral." "Not yet, Doctor. Let them get closer." Smiled. She had worked on this project for 27 years. She had seen the first ship built in just 3 days. She had watched as the belt became home to thousands, then hundreds of thousands of warships, all hidden, all waiting. The fleet moved through space like a dark cloud. Their ships were massive, built for intimidation. Supreme Overlord sat on his command throne aboard the flagship Dominion's Fist. He was 12 feet tall, covered in thick armor-like skin, with 4 arms and red eyes that glowed with satisfaction. "This will be quick," he told his officers. "Humans are barely more than animals. They have no real weapons, no real ships. They will surrender when they see our might." His second-in-command, a smaller named, nodded eagerly. "We detected only a few satellites around their planet, my lord. Perhaps a dozen old patrol ships. Nothing that could challenge even one of our vessels." Laughed, a deep sound that echoed through the bridge. "Prepare the subjugation message. Give them 24 hours to surrender. When they refuse, and they will, the stupid creatures always do, we will demonstrate what happens to those who defy the Empire." The message was sent. It reached Earth within minutes. In the command center, General Minyu read the alien words without emotion. He was a calm man, methodical and careful. He had trained every pilot in the hidden fleet. He knew what they could do. "They want an answer within 24 hours, he said to Admiral. "Give them an answer now," replied. "Tell them we decline." Minyu allowed himself a rare smile. "Just those words, sir." "Just those words." The message went back into space. 2 words, simple, clear: "We decline." On the Dominion's Fist stared at the message in disbelief. Then he began to laugh again. His officers joined him, the sound filling the entire command deck. "They decline," roared with amusement. "The little humans decline. They have no idea what we will do to their world. Advance the fleet, full speed. I want to see their pitiful planet burning within the week." The 50,000 warships surged forward. In the dark spaces beyond Neptune, hidden among asteroids and ice, something began to wake up. Captain Song sat in his small stealth reconnaissance ship, watching the alien fleet approach. His vessel was invisible to their sensors, coated in technology that bent light and energy around it. "They're coming straight in," he reported. "No scouts, no careful approach. They think they've already won." "Good," Kame's voice over the secure channel. "Stay with them. I want to know their exact position at all times." "Yes, sir." Had been out here for 3 weeks, watching and waiting. It was lonely work, but someone had to do it. He thought about his family and soul, safe underground now with millions of others. The evacuation had been smooth. No panic. Humanity had known this day would come. Engineer worked in the massive control station on the dark side of the moon. Around him, thousands of technicians monitored systems that had been decades in the making. The cloaking grid was his masterpiece. It kept 500,000 warships completely invisible. "Power levels are perfect," he reported. "We can drop the cloak whenever you give the word, Admiral." "Stand by, let them come closer." The fleet passed Mars. They still saw nothing but empty space and a few primitive satellites. Was practically dancing on his throne with joy. "This is too easy," he declared. "I expected more from the humans, at least some resistance, some fight, but there is nothing." Looked worried despite his commander's happiness. "Perhaps we should proceed with more caution, my lord. The humans were once traders in the galaxy. They had ships. Where did those ships go?" "Sold for scrap, probably," said, waving a dismissive hand. "Or hidden in fear. It doesn't matter, they are finished." On Earth in the command center, Admiral watched the enemy fleet on his display. They were exactly where he wanted them, between Mars and Earth, surrounded, trapped. "Dr. Park," he said calmly, "activate all ships, bring them online." His fingers flew across her controls. "Activating now, sir. All 500,000 vessels responding, systems online, weapons charged, shields up. They're ready." "Captain, signal all fleet commanders. Prepare to on my mark." His voice was steady. "All commanders standing by, sir." Stood up from his chair. This was the moment. 50 years had led to this. He thought about his son, safe in a bunker inn. He thought about his wife, gone 20 years now, but always in his heart. He thought about every person on Earth who had trusted him to keep them safe. "All ships," he said into the fleet-wide channel. "Show them what we built." In the darkness of space, 500,000 warships suddenly appeared. They surrounded the fleet in a perfect sphere. Every direction was blocked. There was no escape. On the Dominion's fist, every alarm began to scream at once. Supreme Overlord felt something he had not experienced in 200 years of conquest. Fear. Pure, cold fear that ran through his entire body like ice water. His screens showed ships, hundreds of thousands of ships. They were everywhere, above, below, on every side. The fleet was trapped inside a cage of human steel and fire. This is impossible," he whispered. His 4 hands gripped his throne so hard that the metal began to bend. Where did they come from? Frantically worked at his station, his own fear making his movements clumsy. "I don't know, my lord. They just appeared, all of them at once. Our sensors detected nothing until this moment." "How many?" demanded. His voice broke. 500,000 ships, my lord, perhaps more. The counting systems cannot keep up." On Earth, General Menu allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The fleet was positioned perfectly. His pilots were ready. His ships were superior in every way. "Begin the communication," he ordered. A message appeared on every screen. It was Admiral's face, calm and cold as stone. "You came to conquer Earth," said simply. "You believed we were weak because we were quiet. You believed we were afraid because we were hidden. You were wrong about both. We were not weak. We were building. We were not afraid. We were preparing for you." Wanted to scream. He wanted to rage, but the human admiral continued speaking. "You have one chance to surrender. Power down your weapons. Submit to our authority. Your crews will be treated fairly and returned to your worlds. Refuse, and we will show you what human mercy looks like when it runs out." The transmission ended. Roared with fury. "Attack! All ships attack! I don't care if there are 1,000,000 of them. We do not surrender to anyone." The fleet opened fire. 50,000 ships launched everything they had. Energy beams cut through space. Missiles streaked toward the human vessels. For a moment, space itself seemed to burn with violence. Then the human ships fired back. Captain Lee commanded the vanguard, 10,000 ships under her direct control. Her voice was ice. All vanguard units target their command ships first. Batteries full salvo, fire. They were Doctor's second gift to humanity. They accelerated solid metal slugs to incredible speeds using magnetic fields. When they hit like the hand of an angry god. The first volley destroyed 300 command vessels in seconds. The aliens had shields, but human punched through them like paper. Metal met metal, and the ships simply came apart. Watched in horror as his fleet began to die. Impossible. Their weapons shouldn't be this powerful, our intelligence said. Our intelligence was 50 years old, my lord, shouted over the sounds of alarms. They've been developing technology while we thought they were doing nothing. Captain Sung commanded the Stealth Destroyer Division. His ships were smaller, faster, and completely invisible until they fired. He watched the battle unfold and identified his targets. Stealth Wing, target their communication arrays. If they can't talk to each other, they can't coordinate. Make them deaf and blind. His 5,000 ships moved like ghosts through the battle. They never saw them coming. One by one, their communication ships exploded in silence. Within minutes, the alien fleet was cut off from itself. Each ship fought alone, unable to call for help or receive orders. Lieutenant O was the youngest ship captain in the entire human fleet. She was 23 years old and commanded the frigate Rising Phoenix. Her crew of 50 looked to her for orders, and she did not hesitate. All weapons, focus fire on that battleship at coordinates 724. Hit them with everything we have. Her ship's antimatter torpedoes streaked through space and struck the battleship dead center. The torpedoes used containment fields to carry tiny amounts of antimatter. When they hit, matter and antimatter met and annihilated each other. The explosion was brighter than a sun for just a moment. The battleship was simply gone. Target destroyed, her weapons officer reported with a grin. Next target. There's plenty to choose from, replied. Pick another big one. All across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships were smaller than vessels, but they were faster, their shields were stronger, and their weapons were devastating. More importantly, every human pilot had trained for this specific battle for years. They knew exactly what to do. They had conquered through size and fear. The humans had prepared through planning and patience. On the Dominion's fist, watched his empire die. 35,000 ships destroyed in just 6 hours. 6 hours. His mighty fleet was being torn apart like toys. We have to retreat, begged. My lord, we must retreat now or there will be nothing left. Wanted to refuse. His pride demanded he fight to the last ship. But somewhere beneath the pride was the survival instinct of a leader who had ruled for 2 centuries. If he died here, the empire died with him. All ships, he said, his voice broken. Emergency jump, scatter pattern, get out of here. The surviving ships began to activate their faster-than-light drives. Space twisted around them as they prepared to flee. Sir, they're running, reported to Admiral. Let them, replied. Let 8,000 ships escape. Let them go home and tell everyone what happened here. Let them tell the galaxy that humanity is not prey. The ships vanished into FTL, leaving behind a graveyard of 42,000 destroyed vessels. The battle was over. In the command center, General Minu received the final casualty report. His face was grim but not surprised. 247 ships lost, he reported to Admiral. 3,000 crew members dead, 8,000 wounded. Closed his eyes. Every death was a weight on his soul, but it could have been so much worse. It could have been Earth itself burning. Honor them, he said quietly. Every single one. They saved our world. On the Dominion's fist, racing away from Earth at speeds beyond light, sat in silence. His officers were quiet. No one knew what to say. They had lost. The mighty empire had been defeated by a species they thought was primitive. "What will we tell them?" finally asked. "What will we tell the other worlds?" Looked at his second-in-command with tired eyes. "We tell them the truth. We tell them that humans are not to be touched, ever. We tell them that Earth has become the most powerful military force in the galaxy." "The Empire will collapse," said softly. "Perhaps," agreed. "But at least some of us will live to see it happen. If we had stayed in that battle, we would all be dead." Back on Earth in the sole underground shelter, celebrations began. People cried with relief. They hugged their families. They had survived. Above them, in orbit, 500,000 warships maintained their positions. Admiral looked at the stars and wondered what would come next. Humanity had proven they could fight. Now they would have to prove they could win the peace. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," he ordered. "Tell them Earth is ready to talk." Captain Sung watched his screens as the last ships jumped away into darkness. His stealth destroyer division had performed perfectly. Not a single one of his 5,000 ships had been destroyed. They were ghosts in the battle, striking and vanishing before the enemy could respond. "Secure from combat stations," he ordered his crew. "Begin rescue operations. There are survivors out there." His sensor officer looked up in surprise. "Sir, you mean our survivors?" "I mean all survivors," Sung replied firmly. "Included, the battle is over. Now we show them what humanity really is." This was Admiral's order to all ships. Every escape pod, every damaged vessel, every floating survivor would be rescued. Enemy or not, they would be saved. This was the human way. Lieutenant O brought her frigate Rising Phoenix alongside a damaged cruiser. The alien ship was venting atmosphere and spinning slowly in space. Life signs showed 53 crew members still alive inside. "Prepare boarding teams," she ordered. "Full medical support. Treat them as if they were our own people." Her first officer, a young man named Min, hesitated. "Ma'am, they came here to kill us, to destroy Earth." Looked at him with steady eyes. "And they failed. They lost. They're no longer a threat. Now they're just people who need help. We don't leave people to die in space, not even enemies. That's what makes us different from them." Nodded slowly, understanding. "Yes, ma'am, boarding teams launching now." All across the battlefield, human ships were doing the same thing. Thousands of rescue operations began. Soldiers who expected death found themselves pulled from wreckage and given medical care. It confused them. It shocked them. Some refused to believe it was real. One warrior, badly injured and missing 2 of his 4 arms, stared at the human medic treating him. The medic was a small woman named, barely 5 feet tall, working with careful precision to stabilize his wounds. "Why?" the warrior asked in broken standard language. "Why help? We came to destroy you." Looked up at him while she worked. "Because that's who we are. You attacked us, yes. You wanted to hurt us, but the battle is over now. You lost. Killing you now would just be murder. Healing you shows what we believe in." The warrior said nothing more. He simply stared at the ceiling of the medical bay and thought about things he had never considered before. On Earth, Dr. Park was already analyzing the battle data. Her screens showed thousands of recordings from every human ship. She watched how the weapons performed, how the shields held, where improvements could be made. "Fascinating," she muttered to herself. "They exceeded expectations by 17%, but the antimatter torpedoes need better guidance systems. 300 missed their targets." Her assistant, a young engineer named, looked over her shoulder. "Doctor, we won. Isn't that enough?" Smiled but didn't look away from her screens. "We won this time, but there's always a next time. We have to be ready, always ready. That's how humanity survived this long." In the command center, General Minu was organizing the fleet for the next phase. Half the ships would return to defensive positions around Earth. The other half would form a patrol network throughout the solar system. No one would get close to Earth again without being seen. "What about the prisoners?" his second-in-command asked. "They'll be held on Luna Station," Minyu replied. "Comfortable but secure. When their empire sends representatives to negotiate, we'll return them, unharmed." "And if the empire doesn't send anyone?" Minyu considered this. "Then we'll send them back anyway. We're not jailers, we're defenders." Engineer was exhausted but satisfied. His cloaking grid had worked perfectly. 50 years of technology, of testing, of improvements, and it had performed exactly as designed. They had never seen the human fleet until it was too late. Now he had a new task. Admiral wanted the cloaking technology improved even further. Smaller ships, better power efficiency, longer deployment times. "When do you sleep, Admiral?" asked during a video conference. Smiled tiredly. "When Earth is truly safe, Engineer. Until then, we work." 2 weeks after the battle, the first response from the galaxy arrived. The Galactic Council, a gathering of 93 different species, sent a diplomatic ship to Earth. They approached carefully, broadcasting peaceful intentions on every frequency they could think of. Ambassador met the alien diplomats in a conference room built specifically for this purpose. She was 55 years old, with gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She had been a professor of alien cultures before Earth closed its borders. Now she would be humanity's voice to the galaxy. The lead diplomat was a tall, thin creature named Ara, with blue skin and 6 fingers on each hand. She seemed nervous. "Ambassador," Ara began carefully, "the Council wishes to know, what are Earth's intentions?" Smiled gently. "Peace, Counselor, we want peace." "But you have 500,000 warships," another diplomat said, his voice shaking slightly. "You destroyed the fleet in hours. You have technology we have never seen. How can we trust you want peace?" Leaned forward. "Because we have had these ships for 50 years and never used them until someone attacked us. We didn't go looking for war. War came looking for us. We were just ready for it." Ara relaxed slightly. "The Council has many questions, but the most important one is this: will you share your technology with us?" "That depends," replied. "What will you do with it?" "Build defenses, protect our worlds. The galaxy is not always a safe place." Nodded. "Then yes, we will share. Dr. Park and her team will work with your scientists. But understand this, we will only share with those who use it for defense. Anyone who uses our technology to attack others will find themselves cut off, and they will find human ships on their doorstep." The diplomats agreed quickly. They had no desire to face humanity's military might. Over the next month, information about the battle spread across the galaxy. Every species heard the story. The Empire, mighty conquerors of 200 worlds, had been crushed by humanity in a single day. Earth had gone from isolated and unknown to the most powerful military force in known space. Reactions varied. Some species were afraid, others were hopeful. Many small nations that had lived in fear of larger empires suddenly saw a new possibility. If Earth would help them, they could defend themselves too. Captain Lee read the reports and felt both proud and worried. "We've changed everything," she said to Admiral. "The entire balance of power in the galaxy has shifted." "Yes," agreed. "Which means we have to be very careful about what we do next. Power without wisdom is just another form of tyranny." "Do you regret building the fleet?" asked. Looked out at the stars, visible through the massive windows of the command center. "No, I regret that we needed to build it, but I don't regret having it when they came. They would have destroyed Earth. Billions of people would have died. Instead, we saved them. And now we make sure the galaxy knows we built weapons to protect, not to conquer. We help others protect themselves. We become what we always should have been: guardians." The Empire was crumbling. News of the defeat had spread instantly. Worlds that had been conquered generations ago saw their chance. Rebellions broke out on 40 planets within the first week. The mighty empire was tearing itself apart. Supreme Overlord watched from his palace as his power dissolved. He had lived for 200 years. He had conquered countless worlds. And now, because of one mistake, one wrong decision, everything was falling apart. Perhaps, he said to the empty room, this is justice. Back on Earth, Admiral finally allowed himself to go home. He walked into his house for the first time in 3 months. His son ran to hug him. The boy was 16 and already talking about joining the fleet. Dad, everyone says you're a hero, said excitedly. Hugged his son tight. I'm just someone who did his job. The real heroes are the 3,000 who didn't come home. That night stood on his balcony and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, the galaxy was changing. Earth was no longer alone or isolated. They were part of something bigger now, something important. And humanity would be ready for whatever came next. Ambassador stood before the Galactic Council for the first time. The chamber was enormous, built to hold representatives from 93 different species. Some breathed oxygen like humans. Others needed different atmospheres and sat in specialized environmental pods. All of them watched her with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and hope. Members of the council, began, her voice steady and clear, I come before you today not as a conqueror but as a neighbor. Earth seeks peace. We always have, but we will never again be unprepared for war. Counselor Aura, who had become something of a friend too over the past months, spoke first. Ambassador, your world has demonstrated military power beyond anything we have seen. You destroyed the fleet in hours. What guarantee do we have that you won't use that power against us? Had expected this question. The guarantee is this. Earth has had 500,000 warships for 50 years. In all that time, we never fired a shot at anyone until someone attacked us first. We could have built an empire. We could have conquered. We chose not to. That choice defines who we are. A small, reptilian diplomat named hissed his words through a translator. But you are still building ships. Our intelligence reports say you have 200,000 more under construction. Why do you need so many if you truly want peace? Smiled slightly. Because peace requires strength. They attacked us because they thought we were weak. They learned otherwise. We want every potential aggressor to learn that lesson without anyone having to die for it. Our ships are a shield, not a sword. Another diplomat, a floating jellyfish-like creature, pulsed with bioluminescent light. And what of your technology? Will you share it with us? Yes, replied firmly. Dr. Park and her team are already prepared to work with your scientists. We will share our quantum fold construction methods. We will share our defensive shield technology. We will help any peaceful species build their own defense fleets. The chamber erupted in excited chatter. This was more than they had hoped for. But, continued, her voice cutting through the noise, understand this clearly. We will share only with those who use it for defense. Any species that uses our technology to attack others will be cut off immediately, and they will answer to Earth. The chamber fell silent. The message was clear. Earth was offering protection and assistance, but with conditions. Fair conditions, but absolute ones. On Earth, Dr. Park was already meeting with the first group of alien scientists. They sat in her laboratory, staring at the quantum fold construction systems with wonder. It's beautiful, one of them whispered, a furry creature named from a world called Pax 7. How did you develop this? Smiled. Necessity. We knew we couldn't compete with galactic empires using conventional construction methods, so we found a new way. The quantum fold allows us to manipulate spacetime on a molecular level. We can assemble ships piece by piece in minutes instead of years. And you're just giving this to us? Another scientist asked skeptically. We're teaching you, corrected. You'll have to adapt it to your own technology and resources. But yes, We're sharing the fundamental principles. Because a galaxy where everyone can defend themselves is a galaxy where fewer wars happen. Her assistant watched the alien scientists with fascination. This was history being made. Earth was changing from isolated and defensive to open and collaborative. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Empire continued to collapse. Former subject worlds were declaring independence every day. Some peacefully, others through bloody rebellion. The empire that had seemed eternal was crumbling in real time. Captain Lee led a fleet of 10,000 ships on a mercy mission. One of the former worlds, a planet called, was caught in a civil war. Millions of civilians were trapped in the fighting. "We're approaching orbit," her navigation officer reported. "Multiple vessels in the area, some military, some civilian. They're shooting at each other." Took a deep breath. "Open a channel to all ships in the system, all frequencies." When the channel was open, she spoke clearly. "This is Captain Lee of the Earth Defense Fleet. We are here on a humanitarian mission. We will evacuate any civilians who want to leave. We will not take sides in your conflict, but we will not tolerate attacks on civilian ships or on our vessels. Choose your next actions carefully." On the planet below, both sides of the Civil War paused their fighting to watch the human ships arrive. 10,000 advanced warships sat in orbit, weapons powered but not targeting anyone specific. "They're really here to help," a rebel leader asked his second-in-command. "That's what they're saying," came the reply. "After we helped invade their world, after our empire tried to destroy them." "Apparently, yes." The rebel leader made a decision that would change his life. "Open a channel to the human captain. Tell her we have 3 million civilians who need evacuation. Ask if they'll help." Within hours, human ships were landing all across. They loaded civilians by the thousands, men, women, children of a species that had tried to conquer Earth just months ago. Not one human soldier complained. Not one refused the task. Lieutenant O watched as frightened children boarded her ship. They were scared, hungry, and confused. Her crew immediately began distributing food and water, setting up temporary sleeping areas, providing medical care. "Why are you doing this?" one mother asked, tears streaming down her face. "After what we did to you." Knelt down to be at eye level with the children. "Because you didn't do anything to us. Your government did. Your military did, but you're just trying to keep your family safe. That's something we understand." The mother wept harder, but now from gratitude rather than fear. Back at the Galactic Council, Ambassador received report after report of Earth's humanitarian missions. 32 worlds had requested assistance. Earth was providing food, medicine, technology, and protection. The galaxy was seeing a new kind of power. Not power through fear, but power through generosity. "You're winning hearts," Counselor Ara told her during a private meeting. "Species that were terrified of you 2 months ago are now asking to join your alliance." "We're not building an empire," reminded her. "We're building partnerships." "I know," Ara replied. "That's why it's working." Engineer was exhausted but happy. He had spent the last 3 months teaching alien engineers how to build defensive systems. Some learned quickly, others struggled, but all of them were trying. He had teams on 15 different worlds now, all working toward the same goal. "You know," his assistant told him, 5 years ago, if someone had told you that you'd be teaching aliens how to build weapons, you would have thought they were crazy." Laughed. 5 years ago, if someone had told me humans had 500,000 hidden warships, I would have thought they were crazy too. Things change." On the former, Supreme Overlord received a visitor. It was unexpected. It was unprecedented. It was Captain Sung, commander of Earth's Stealth Destroyer Division. "Why are you here?" asked, his pride barely hiding his curiosity. "To offer you a choice," Sung replied calmly. "Your empire is finished. Everyone knows that, but you personally can still do something good. You know how the empire worked. You know where the corruption was, where the injustices happened. Help us make things right. Laughed bitterly. Help you? I tried to destroy your world. Yes, Sung agreed. And you failed. That chapter is over. This is a new chapter. You can spend it bitter and alone, or you can spend it trying to fix what you broke. Your choice. The old overlord was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. What would I have to do? Testify at the council. Tell them everything. Help the freed worlds establish fair governments. Use your knowledge to prevent future tyrants. And if I refuse? Sung shrugged. Then you refuse. We won't force you. But we're giving you the chance to be remembered as someone who tried to make amends, rather than just someone who failed. Thought about his 200 years of life, about all the worlds he had conquered, all the suffering he had caused in the name of empire. Maybe, just maybe, he could end his life doing something decent. I'll do it, he said quietly. As news of these events spread across the galaxy, something remarkable began to happen. Species that had never trusted each other started talking. Old enemies began negotiating peace. Small worlds that had always been afraid started feeling hope. And at the center of it all was Earth. Not dominating, not controlling, just present, ready to help, ready to protect. Admiral watched reports of all this from his office on Earth. His son sat with him, reading the same reports for a school project. Dad, the boy asked, did you know it would turn out like this? Smiled. I hoped that if we showed strength without cruelty, power without arrogance, others would respond. Hope isn't certainty, but sometimes hope is enough. 5 years had passed since the invasion. The galaxy was different now. Better, most agreed, safer, fairer, and at the heart of it all stood Earth and its allies. Admiral Lee, promoted after Admiral's retirement, stood on the bridge of her new flagship. She was now Supreme Commander of the Galactic Defense Initiative, a coalition of 40 species working together to maintain peace. Her hair had a few gray streaks now, earned through 5 years of careful diplomacy and occasional military action. Status report, she requested. Her operations officer, a human named Park, scanned his displays. All sectors are quiet, Admiral. Patrol ships report no unusual activity. The new defense stations around the PAC systems are fully operational. Nodded with satisfaction. The PAC systems had been vulnerable for centuries. Now, with Earth's help, they had their own defense fleet and could protect themselves. That was the model they had followed everywhere. Don't do the protecting for others. Teach them to protect themselves. Ambassador, now Secretary General of the Interstellar Alliance, addressed the Council. She was 60 years old now, but her eyes still burned with the same passion they had 5 years ago. We've come far, she told the assembled representatives. 40 species working together, 30 former worlds now independent and thriving. Trade routes are safe. Piracy is down 70%. Wars between member species have dropped to 0. This is what we built together. A young diplomat from the species, the same furry creature's doctor had first taught, stood to speak. Secretary General, my world would like to formally thank Earth once more. 5 years ago we had nothing. Now we have ships, stations, and security. Our children sleep safely because of what you taught us. Smiled warmly. We showed you the way, you did the work, never forget that, you saved yourselves. Back on Earth, Dr. Park was training the next generation of scientists. Her lab was filled with young minds, both human and alien, working together on new technologies. She was 73 now, but retirement wasn't in her vocabulary. One of her students was her own son, Park. At 22, he was already making breakthroughs in shield technology. He had his mother's genius and his father's determination. Mom called from across the lab, I think I've solved the power efficiency problem. Look at these numbers. Walked over and studied his screen. Her eyes widened. This is incredible. With this, we could run shields at full power for 3 times as long. And it scales, added excitedly. Small ships, big ships, even stations, it works for all of them. Hugged her son. Your father would have been so proud. Smiled sadly. His father had died 2 years ago, a civilian casualty in a pirate raid that had sparked a major GDI operation. It was why he had dedicated himself to defensive technology. Every life saved was a tribute to his father. Engineer had retired from active duty but still consulted on special projects. He was teaching at the New Earth Polytechnic, a university that accepted students from any species. His classroom was always full, and his students went on to do amazing things. One day, a former officer came to his office. The warrior was old now, missing 2 arms from the battle 5 years ago, recognized him immediately. This was one of the survivors his teams had rescued. Professor, the said in much improved standard language, I wanted you to know, I teach now too. I teach young about the day I learned that strength without honor is just violence, and that mercy can be stronger than any weapon. Felt tears in his eyes. What do you teach them specifically? Engineering, defense systems, but also philosophy, about what I learned from humans, that the strongest societies are not those who can conquer, but those who can protect. My students will never make the mistakes my generation made. They shook hands, well hand and remaining arm, and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was the real victory, not the battle 5 years ago, but this, changing hearts and minds. Captain Sung had become something of a legend. His stealth division was now responsible for counter-piracy operations across 40 systems. He had trained teams from 15 species in stealth tactics and advanced reconnaissance. Pirates called him the Ghost and avoided any system where his ships patrolled. Contact, his sensor officer called. Unknown vessels entering the Marcus system. Configuration doesn't match any known species. Sung was immediately alert. Battle stations, launch scouts, I want to know who they are before they know we're here. This was the part of the job that never got easier. New threats, new unknowns. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had only explored a tiny fraction of it. Lieutenant O, now Captain O at 28 years old, commanded a heavy cruiser called the Eternal Dawn, the same name as the old flagship. She was leading a diplomatic mission to a newly discovered species when the alert came through. All ships Priority 1 alert, came Admiral's voice. Unknown vessels detected in multiple systems, not responding to communications, possibly hostile, all fleets to defensive positions. Immediately changed course. Plot a jump to Earth, maximum speed. If there's going to be another fight, we'll be there. Across the galaxy, the same scene repeated. Human ships and their allies moved into defensive formations. They had built peace for 5 years. They were ready to defend it if necessary. On Earth, admirals studied the reports. 47 unknown ships had appeared in 5 different systems. They were large, heavily armed, and moving toward populated worlds. When attempts at communication failed, warning shots were fired. The unknown ships responded with devastating weapons that punched through shields like they weren't there. Get me Secretary General, ordered. Moments later, his face appeared on the screen. I see it, what do we know? Nothing yet, but their technology is advanced, maybe more advanced than ours. We need to assume worst-case scenario. Nodded grimly. Mobilize the defense fleets, but try diplomacy first. We don't want another war if we can avoid it. Within hours, 2 million ships were moving. Not just human vessels, but ships from 40 different species. The Galactic Defense Initiative was fully activated for the first time in its history. Young Cadet Park stood on the bridge of a science vessel near Earth. It was his first real assignment, and it was happening during a potential invasion. His mother's words echoed in his mind. Always be ready, always be prepared. Cadet Park, the ship's captain said, we need someone to analyze the enemy weapon signatures. You're the shield specialist, that's you. Jumped into action, his fingers flying across the console. The data was fascinating and terrifying. These weapons worked on principles he had only theorized about. "Captain," he reported, "I think I can adapt our shields to defend against this, but I need an hour and a lot of computing power." "You have 30 minutes and all the computing power on Earth. Make it work." In 27 minutes, he had created a new shield algorithm and transmitted it to every ship in the defense fleet. Meanwhile, Admiral was leading the diplomatic approach. Her fleet of 50,000 ships positioned itself between the unknown vessels and a populated world. It was a clear message: you go through us to get to them. "Unknown vessels," she broadcast on all frequencies. "We do not want conflict. We seek only to understand your intentions. Please respond." For a long moment there was silence. Then, finally, a response came. The voice was translated by computer, cold and mechanical. "We are the collective. We came to evaluate this region for integration. Your resistance is noted. Your technology is impressive. You have proven yourselves worthy of dialogue." Let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Worthy of dialogue wasn't "we surrender," but it wasn't "we attack" either. "Then let us talk," she replied. "We have much to discuss." The crisis was resolved through weeks of careful negotiation. The collective, it turned out, was an ancient machine intelligence that had been asleep for thousands of years. They had awakened to find the galaxy changed. They weren't hostile, just careful, and impressed that organic beings had built such an effective defense network. They agreed to peace. They even agreed to share some of their technology in exchange for learning about organic culture and philosophy. On the memorial grounds of Earth, a new statue was unveiled. It showed Admiral, who had passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 months before this latest crisis. He stood tall, hands clasped behind his back, looking toward the stars. The inscription read, "They thought our silence was weakness, it was preparation. They thought our isolation was fear, it was forge work. They came to conquer. They learned we are humanity, and we never forget to prepare for the worst while hopping for the best." Stood before the statue with tears in her eyes. "We did it, old man," she whispered. "We kept them safe, just like you taught us." Around her, representatives from 40 species stood in respect. Former enemies, new friends, all united by the example Earth had set 5 years ago. The example of preparing for war to maintain peace. The example of using strength to protect rather than dominate. Young Park stood with his mother, both looking at the statue. "Do you think there will be more threats?" he asked. Nodded. "Always. The galaxy is big and full of unknowns. But that's okay, because we'll be ready. We'll always be ready. That's what it means to be human. That's what it means to be guardians." Across the galaxy, on 40 different worlds, people looked at the stars with less fear than they once had. Children played safely. Parents worked without constant worry about invasion. Scientists collaborated across species barriers. Artists created works that blended cultures in beautiful ways. And above them all, millions of ships patrolled the darkness. Human ships and alien ships working together, not to conquer, not to dominate, but to protect, to guard, to keep the peace they had all worked so hard to build. In a small house in Seoul, Admiral's son, now 31 and a ship captain himself, sat with his own young daughter. She was 5 years old and full of questions. "Daddy, Grandpa was a hero, right?" "Yes, sweetie, he was." "Will I be a hero too someday?" Smiled and hugged his daughter. "You already are, just by being kind and brave. But if you want to protect people like Grandpa did, then yes, you can be anything you want." The little girl smiled and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere up there, the fleet was watching. Somewhere up there, humanity and its allies stood guard. The invasion had started with 50,000 enemy ships, but 500,000 warships had been waiting. And now, 5 years later, millions stood ready, not for conquest, not for empire, but for peace. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all.